Welcome to Let's Talk Church and Other Things. I'm your host, Sherla.
And I'm Corey.
And today we have a guest host, Miss Rhody, as she's known here in Rhode Island. But Raisa, thank you.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And we also have a guest, Miss Yolanda. Some of you all may remember her from a past episode, but she's here with us again. And today's episode is going to be a little different because Miss Rhody will be interviewing both Yolanda and myself on our story, I guess, of being adopted and where we are today.
What a journey.
What a journey. So I guess I'll start. I found out at the age of 12 years old that I was adopted. The parents that I always knew as mom and dad, it turned out that my mom was biologically my aunt. I was the daughter of her sister, and they had adopted me before I was 1 year old. I know they didn't take me right from the hospital, but before I turned one, they had adopted me. When I found out at the age of 12, I guess I really didn't know how to respond. I remember putting my head down on the table and crying and looking at them and, not knowing if I was going to get my teeth knocked out, but I had to say what I had to say. And I felt like I had been lied to, not so much by them, but by others that knew I was not their biological child, but would say to me, "Oh, you look just like your mother." No, I don't. She's not my mother. Now I'm finding out. Yeah, she was still family, but it's like, you all, like, why did people say that? So at that moment, I went through a whirlwind of emotions, and Yolanda reminded me that, I came to school, and Yolanda's been my friend for a long time, and we had another friend, and she said, I came to them and said, what?
She said, she was upset, and we were asking, why are you upset? And she just had a hard time saying it. She kept saying, it starts with an A, begins with an A. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like, we're all 12-year-olds.
A lot of things are going through my mind with that letter.
And so she finally said it. She said, adopted. And we were like, oh, okay, well, it didn't mean anything to us because she was still Charlotte. So, but we were, just trying to let her know that it was okay, from our perspective. And who else's perspective mattered at that point, right?
Right.
So you noticed the change in her right away in her behavior as her friend. Like she came to school and something wasn't right.
Oh, we were like thick as thieves. The three of us were together every day, Monday through Friday, and sometimes I saw Cheryl on the weekends in church. So, yeah, we knew she was upset.
I want to know what you said when they told you. Like, what was it that you said that we can't know?
What?
When your foster parent said you're adopted, like, what was your reaction? You said, you didn't say some nice things.
No,
I
I
want to know
said
what
to
you
them,
said.
no, when I said, like, I felt like I had been lied to. I remember looking at my mom, like, I was sitting in the middle of the table. My dad was on the right. My mom was on the left. And I remember looking at my mom saying, but you're not even my mother, like, and I was 12, so I don't know how I was supposed to feel. I just know how I felt at that time. But they also felt bad, especially my dad, because I was a daddy's girl. So just to see me and really not knowing what to say to make me feel better, other than, you're our daughter, we love you, nothing changes. And, so now the person that I'm thinking is my aunt is actually my biological mother.
Okay.
So it's like...
Wait. We got to pause there because you're giving us a lot. So you've been around your biological mother this whole time, calling her auntie.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. And my siblings, they're my cousins. They're my cousins.
And did they know all along?
I don't know who knew and when.
Okay.
I mean, they knew, but I don't know if some were told afterwards or if they knew all along, but no one ever said anything to me. Let me back up. Some years prior to me finding out, I remember coming home crying to my parents and saying, one of my cousins said I was adopted. I really didn't understand what that meant at that time. So they just consoled me, no, you're okay, yeah. And that was it. So I didn't think any more of it. Like, no, I'm their child. First of all, explain what adoption means, because
Yeah.
I was young. Like, but all along, it's like, okay, all this family knows,
All the adults know.
and
Right.
some of the children, but I don't.
How did that make you feel? Like that everybody around you was living a lie, but here you were living life like nothing.
So that was the start of my trust issues. I'll tell anybody that. That was the start of my trust issues. Ask me who I don't trust. I don't know. Everybody. I can't say I didn't trust my parents, because they felt they were doing the right thing by telling me at an age where they felt it's time for me to know and I would be able to understand it. But all the other people that the deal, don't say I look like her and she's not
And you
my
know,
mother.
and you know.
Don't do that.
Do you feel like it should have been done in therapy, or were you okay being it like the way it was done with your parents and just you there? Do you feel like you needed somebody, like some type of other outside source for support, just for that emotional damage that was about to hit that maybe nobody was prepared for, including your parents?
So when I look at it now, probably, because, like I said, it was definitely the start of my trust issues. Back then, you really didn't hear about therapy. Let's talk church and other things. Yeah, everything was church.
Yes.
God will take care of it. God will heal you. God will see you through. I don't see no scripture in the Bible that tells me how to get through how I'm feeling right now. So that was like their mentality. So I got over it, because nothing changed about how much they loved me. So that didn't change.
Did it change for you? Did it change the way maybe you looked at them? Like, did it make you not want to call her mom and dad?
Absolutely
did that ever
not.
did it, that ever
Absolutely
feel-
not, because I knew the biological, I would never call mom. I mean, no disrespect or anything, but I only knew Mary and Meek as my parents. So there's nobody that could have changed that. And even though I went through, not outwardly where they could see it, but a lot of times I thought about it, because you think about, my biological mom, I was child number 7.
Wow.
Well, you kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. Number 5, her godparents took her, and they never adopted her, but she was raised with them. Again, my mom was good friends with her mom, and I would go see her, and I'm just thinking she's Valerie, not knowing she's my sister Valerie.
Okay.
That comes out years later, even after I found out that I was adopted at 12. I still don't think they told me that Valerie was actually my sister. So you think about, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, she kept. 5 went with her godparents when she was, I don't know, maybe a year old. She was pregnant with number 6 when her husband passed away.
Okay.
So my brother I think she was like 8 months pregnant with number 6, who was my brother. And then after her husband passed away, because she got married at a young age, and she missed out on a lot. So when her husband passed away, then she started doing things that she didn't get to do back in the day.
Okay.
And then somewhere along the way,
You came.
the sperm donor came along,
Life happened.
and here I sit.
So how is your relationship with her now? With your biological mom? Do you talk to her? Do you call her? Can you ask her questions? Is she open to discussions about maybe what happened and why it happened? And why she, gave you to the better person that was fit to raise you?
Absolutely the better ones. So, Corey, that's my first cousin. I call him my little brother, so we're very close. I've always been respectful. I've been there to help when, she ended up adopting 2 girls. afterwards.
How'd that make you feel?
It didn't bother me at all, but my other siblings had an issue with it. Some of my other siblings had a big issue with it because they're like, you gave away 2 and then you adopt 2. And whether for her it was, I don't know, kind of like trying to make up for what happened. So if I can help these other 2 kids that were so bad.
It might fill the void that I created.
Yeah, but even, I still stuck by her. When those kids stole from her, I'd be right there to replace the money.
Wow.
Times I had to go over there and have prayer with them just to keep peace in the household. So I've always been there. When my sister was passed away in Philadelphia and it was a touchy situation, like I was the one called on to get her a husband to have the body sent here so we could have something here.
Wow.
And I remember saying, I don't know if I said it to you, but I remember saying, well, I wasn't even raised with them. How come I have to do all this? Why? So
True feelings.
But I've been there for her. I have been there for her. It's different. I'll never, and this is not really about her. This is about me. But because you asked that question, I'll always respect her. I'll always have love for her. I have to love the fact that she didn't abort me, and I was placed in, like, for me, the best, the best. I mean, like I said, if we came back in life and we got to choose our parents, I'm going right back with Meek and Mary.
Amen.
No questions asked. So,
I got a quick question. How did you feel after your parents told you that you was adopted when she seen your biological mother? How did you feel when she walked through the door? Do you remember how you felt when you seen her for the first time after knowing she was your mother?
I do remember saying, like, I'm not calling her mom. And they were like, nope, she's still your aunt. You don't have to call her mom. And I remember when I told my sons, the story, and I'm adopted, but I'm like, nope, she's still your aunt. Nana and Papa, Meek and Mary, those are your grandparents. So nothing changes there. But no, and even to this day, even though my parents have now passed, no, she'll always just be my aunt.
Why you think your parents told you at 12? What, did something happen that day that made them tell you that day?
I think they probably just felt that it was time. It was time. And then I'll let her get into her story. And because we were very close in school, they probably just felt it was time.
Are you glad they told you? Or would you rather not know?
No, I'm glad they told me, but I'm sad that I only know half the story, half the family. That's today at 61 years old. That's what bothers me.
Yeah. Okay.
So, my story is a little different from Charlotte's story in that I didn't find out that I was adopted until I was in my 40s. By that time, both my biological mother and my mother, who raised me, were both passed away. And now, not to say that I hadn't heard, like Charlotte said, someone mentioned something. My parents had been foster parents all my life. And also my aunts and uncles, my mother's brothers and sisters, they'd all had foster parents. And so, even adoption, I have other siblings that were adopted, and they all knew that they were adopted. And so one day, one of my children came home from school, and he was in middle school, and said, "Mom, why didn't you tell us you were adopted?" And I was like, what are you talking about?
God.
Yeah, I almost got in a fight at school with my cousin because they were saying that you were adopted and I was saying that you weren't. And I'm like, okay, all right, hold on. I don't know. Let me find out what's going on. So I called my mother's sister. Actually, at the time, my father was still alive. And I was living in Florida, but my father was here. And I came to visit, and I said, I took him out to dinner, just the two of us. Now, mind you, he had just started with dementia. So I said, Dad, I need to know, was I adopted? And he looked at me and he said, I don't remember.
Oh my God.
And I said, Dad, you don't remember if I was adopted? He said, no, I don't remember. And I said, okay. So then I went to my aunts, my mother's sisters, and I asked them, was I adopted? And they both said yes. They both, they told me yes. One, Aunt Ruth said, your mom, she couldn't have any children of her own. And one day, her and your father left, and they came back with this baby, and we were all excited and all happy, and we had a baby. And the thing that bothered me the most, they couldn't remember, like, I think her name was this. I think your mom's, I can't remember your father's name. Now, mind you, it was 40 some odd years ago. So they couldn't remember. I had no real information to go on as to who my biological family was. And like Sherla, I was raised, I thought I had the best parents in the world, so I would not, I would have chosen them myself if I had to. Because there was nothing that made me think when I was growing up, because you hear stories of people who were adopted and everything. Well, I wondered why they always treated me differently, and I wasn't treated differently. Not by my parents, not by my family, my extended family. And mind you, my extended family is huge. But I wasn't treated differently by any of them. And so there was nothing that made me feel like I was adopted. The thing that bothered me the most was that my mother and I never had that conversation, that she never told me. When the times that somebody would come to me and say, aren't you Reverend Ricketts' foster child? I'm like, I'm not a foster child. And then I'd go back to my mother and say, Mom, so-and-so said I was a foster child. You're not a foster child. You're mine.
Aww.
So I took that to say that I was her biological. She never said that to me, but that's what I took it to mean, that I'm not a foster child. I'm her biological child. And so that happened a couple of times, and she would tell me, don't listen, you're mine. Okay, all right. But I don't know why she never felt like she wanted to have that conversation with me. I think now when I think back, because at first that was the biggest thing that really bothered me, was like, Mom, because we were so close. I mean, she and I were best friends, and we talked every day. I was at her house every day. We were just very close, and I didn't know why everybody else could know. And when, just like Sherla, everybody else in my whole family knew that I was adopted, and I didn't know. So they had conversations, with their children. And no one ever said anything to me about it. And I think it can go two ways. One could be that, okay, well, I wasn't the only person in our family that had been adopted into that family. And so whenever anybody came into the family, it was just, you're just family. And we don't look at adopted, right? It was adoption and not your family. That's it. And I just think that my mother never wanted me to feel any different. I mean, that's the only thing that I can come up with, because I don't think she wanted me to feel like the fact that she didn't give birth to me, that I was any less of, because when I tell you, there was nothing that I wanted for or didn't have or couldn't have. My cousins used to always be mad at me, say I was spoiled because I got everything I wanted. And so I don't have any complaints about my parents.
Do you feel anger issues because you don't have neither of the moms to get your answers from?
I did at first. I did. But I had to do a lot of praying and a lot of introspection. And I feel like, I don't know, like Sherla, I was the seventh child, but the child before me was also adopted out, and so was I. And I have two younger siblings that came. But I don't know what my biological mother was going through at the time. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what her state of mind was. I cannot say. All that I know is that she thought she was making the best decision for herself, for me, for her whole family, I'm sure. Yeah. And
try not to pass judgment on her.
Absolutely not. I found my biological family through ancestry. My mother's side, I still don't know who my father's side is, but I have found my And I've met my living siblings, and I didn't get to meet some of my siblings because they passed prior to me finding them. And so I'm able to, kind of get a glimpse of who my biological mother was, what she was like, through them. I would like to have known her, to have met her once, but I think that for me to dwell on that, something that I can't change, I can't dwell on that. I have to dwell on the fact that I know that I came up in a loving environment, and my parents weren't perfect because nobody is, right? We've all,
Exactly.
but they were perfect for me, and so I feel that it was just God's will for me to be where I was, and I feel like it's God's will for me to be here now, because I think one of the things that Charlotte and I talked about was that we wanted to make sure people knew the importance of telling children that they're adopted, because you not only just because I think it's important to know where you come from. I think it's important to know your medical history. All my life, I'm not knowing. Once I found out that I was adopted, I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know what I'm predisposed for. So I'm trying to make sure I'm going to the doctor, get my physicals, doing everything right to
Can
try to.
I cut you off
stay
really
healthy.
quickly just
Sure.
because I wanted to know? So when you go to the doctor's office now, do you tell them I'm adopted so I don't know how to fill this out, or do you kind of just leave it as is and don't say anything?
Well, I tell them now from my biological family's perspective on my mother's side,
Okay.
because that I know. I don't know, from my father's side, but it just so happened that it kind of mirrored my my family, like with the everything that Black people have, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. It was all in my biological family as well as in my adoptive family.
Do you feel a void? Do you feel any emptiness? And I'm just, because when you're speaking, I feel like you have a little bit of sadness, just like looking in your eyes when you're speaking, like just, I'm being honest, I just see a little bit of, just a little bit of sadness, a little bit of emptiness, and just like, you want answers, and it's just like, where are you going to get them from? Your dad doesn't remember, the two women who could answer are not here, and so you're going based on everybody else. How does that make you feel inside?
It made me feel really bad for a while. I couldn't, again, for that very reason, I'm like, the very people that I needed to have those conversations with are not here. One of the things that did happen was I came home for, I can't remember, one of my family's funerals, and I went, my godmother, who was also my aunt, she was in a nursing home, and my cousin said, come on, let's go see my mother. And I'm like, oh, is she going to recognize me? Because I thought maybe she wouldn't. She said, oh, yeah, come on. So I went in, and I'm talking, and I'm saying, hey, how you doing, Aunt Julia? Hey, and she's saying, how you doing, and what you doing? I said, I just came from Connecticut. I said, oh, as a matter of fact, I met my biological family on my mother's side. She said, oh, they didn't tell you about that, did they? I said, no, they didn't. Why don't you tell me?
So too.
Yes. So she said that my mother and father, they got me right from the hospital from my mother, and they took me and registered registered my birth with their names.
Okay.
So I don't have another birth certificate. There's no one else that, they went right to the hospital. I assume that they knew my biological mother, and they had already had this arranged in advance, and they went in, and back then they didn't have money for lawyers and all of that kind of stuff. So they did what they thought was the right thing to do. They went in and got the baby out of the hospital and took me down and registered my birth. So that to me was even eye-opening. Just to know something. I knew that's about, but I think that overall I can't allow myself to get to overcome with, oh my God, why?
Right.
Why can't I know? I went there for a minute, but then I realized that I wasn't helping myself to stay there.
Right.
And I had to try to just think about what either one of them were going through at the time when they made the decisions that they made. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that they both felt like they were making the decisions that were in my best interest. So that's what I find comforting.
So did you
One
go-
of the questions you asked her about the doctor. So I remember coming home. I probably was about, I don't know, 19 or so, and I was so upset because I had to switch doctors, and they ask about, your family history. And I remember saying, "Oh my God, I went to the doctor, and they want to know about, your dad's side of the family." And I'm like, I don't know. My father, I think he was more upset than I was. But again, that's an opportunity for you to tell me what
Right.
you know, and you're not telling me anything. And I think Yolanda can agree with this. No matter how much love and stuff they gave us, I don't know why they had a fear of just letting us know. Because again, like her, I got all of that. Oh, you're spoiled. Oh, here they come, the rich family and all that. Nah, my fam was not rich. They didn't have to show the struggle when they walked out of the house.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
So because they walked out the house looking like, everything's 100, there's nothing wrong with that. I remember
right.
one year we all had leather coats. Oh, here comes the leather coat family.
Not knowing how long they had to save or how hard they had to work for
And that
it.
came from a sibling of mine. Like, really? But you're talking about the family that comes and makes sure you all have food on the table. You're talking about the family, not to put you all's business
Yeah.
out there, but there was times where, his mom had 7 kids. And when things wasn't going right at home, her and all 7 of those kids
Had a
would
bunk
be at
up.
my parents' house. Okay,
Yep.
we had 2 bedrooms and a basement. My father would give up his bed for his sister-in-law, and you were a baby. He would go in the basement with the other boys, and my aunt had one daughter, and she would share the room with me. And those kind of things, like, no, I don't know if the other parent would have taught me how to really take care of family, be there for one another. Even though I promised myself I'm not going to be there as much as they were, because they died with people still owing them. But so that thing about the doctor and not knowing, and for me, one thing was, because I get it, when you can put yourself in that space where it's like, and you can really go downhill
Real dark
quick.
space.
Because I'm like, I was child number 7. What was wrong with me that you didn't want me? That's the way I looked at it.
Yeah.
You didn't want me, because I never got a clear explanation as to why I was adopted. I mean, I heard that, my mom couldn't have kids. That's fine. Okay. But that's all rumors. So no one ever gave me a clear indication as to why I was adopted. So I went through that thing. Well, wow, I wonder how it was like being raised in a house with other siblings, because I was raised as an only child. So, they're all over there doing whatever, bunking up.
But Mama
and I'm
Sherla-
over here in a big room by myself with all the toys in the world, but still wondering what is it like to have,
Right.
those siblings. But I finally had to get myself out of that headspace and, like, you know what? You got to be grateful, because you got the best. You got the best.
And I think it's different for you too, because your biological mother is alive.
That's
and
what-
you
yeah.
know your biological mother. And so for you to ask that question, I think it's really, really valid to say, well, what was wrong with me? Like, why did you give me up? And I think that that's valid, especially given, the circumstances. And so I would probably feel the same way.
So, cousin, what do you think would happen if I was to pose that question?
I don't think that would be a good conversation. I don't think it would go well.
How do you suggest she ask? I mean, they're 2 adult women at this point, and I think that, just my personal opinion, I think you have to go to the direct source and ask her these questions. And you want to know why. I mean, you're 61 years old. You've been holding this in for so long. It's time for you to know and ask those questions. So my question to you is, when are you going to ask her?
I'm not, because to be honest with you, it's not a big deal to me as to why, because I had the best. All I want to know is the other side of the family. Yeah, I want to know about that side of the family that I never got to know. I pray to God that there's still, family on that side that's alive, and I hope that this year I can connect with some of them. One thing you have to understand about my family, not me, not him, but others, they just, whatever happened in the past, that's where it's in the past.
That's like such an old school thing.
Yeah,
Like, let's
they-
just sweep it under the
yeah.
rug.
They
They
just
just
leave
don't
it
want to
there.
address
Yeah.
it.
But they don't realize the rug's this high now.
Yeah, and they don't realize that like you're struggling with some things, and I think that you need to have certain conversations and maybe ask not why you gave me up, but maybe just ask her,
Only
write a
thing
list
I
of
would want to know,
questions.
do you know who he is? What was his name? Because the only name, I'm going to throw the nickname out there because maybe someone listened to this will know. I mean, he was stationed in Newport. These are the stories I heard.
He was a military man.
Yep.
Okay.
He had an aunt that lived on Taylor Street.
Okay.
So I was born in 61. And they called him A-Roy. And I
A-Roy.
think that was a nickname. That's the only information I ever got. And I don't even know how that came about, but one day that much came out, and he bought me my first pair of shoes. And I'll remember it like it was yesterday, in the living room, and I wanted to ask some more questions, but yeah, I didn't know how my parents were going to take it. Because at the same time when you want to know, but you don't ever want to make them feel bad for wanting to know.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want them to be like, she wants to know who her biological father is. And I was so close to my dad, and I didn't want him to think that, if she finds him,
She's gonna replace us or something like
yeah.
that.
And so why as children were we so worried about how, sparing our parents' feelings when no one thought about ours?
You don't know no better at that age.
Yeah. I mean, I think too that, and it might even be a good idea at some point, Charlotte, to even have people who have adopted children come and talk about that experience and like from that perspective. But I think that they thought that they were sparing our feelings. I think that they thought that they were. Now the funny thing is, one of my sisters, when I met her, and we were going through pictures, and she showed me this family member and that family member, and she says to me, "Well, did you have a nickname growing up?" And I said, "Well, coming up, everybody called me by my middle name, which was Carlette." She goes, "Oh my God." She said, "You used to come and visit us when you were little. Mama used to call us in the house and say, 'Carlette's coming. Everybody clean up. Let's get ready for Carlette.'" She said, "They told us you were our cousin."
Oh wow.
So how many brothers and sisters do you have?
There were 9 of us in total.
Oh, wow.
3 have passed, and so I have 3 sisters and 2 brothers that are still alive.
Now, was you the only one that she gave up
No,
for
there was
adoption?
one other sister that, and like I said, I only found them because I went on Ancestry, and 2 of my sisters were in there, and they were looking for their fathers. That's why they were in Ancestry. Well, that's why they thought they were in Ancestry. They were there because the Lord let them be there so that I could find them.
Amen.
But yeah, and so and I just beautiful, lovely people. They like opened their arms to me and never made me feel like they didn't want to have anything to do with me or why was I contacting them or anything. And so, and I never wanted, and I think part of that, what you were saying, is part of not wanting my family to feel bad because I'm reaching out to my biological family, because I can't replace my family. Right. I mean, everything, to me, family is about relationships. It's about love. It's about experiences. When we all sit down and we talk and we start talking about, oh, grandma, my mom and pop and what we were doing when we were little and we did this and that, that's the relationship that I have with my family. And now I'm learning my biological family, and they can sit down and have those conversations amongst themselves, but I wasn't a part of that.
Right.
So, it's
Yolanda, did you go back and tell your son he was right?
Yeah, he knows he was.
Well, because that's how you found out. You found
Yeah.
out through your own child.
Yeah, who told him there was arguing in school or something?
Yeah, one of his cousins, and I don't know how they got to talking about it, and for some reason, the cousin said that I was adopted, and he said no, I wasn't, and because I had never said anything to them about being adopted, I'd never said anything to them about it because I didn't know. I
No.
mean, I was. She told me I was hers, and looking back, I know it was her way of just saying, "You're not a foster child. No one's coming to get you. You're not going anywhere.
Protecting your
You're
feelings.
mine. You don't have to worry about any of that." And she loved me, and I still stand right now to say that she was the person in the world that loved me unconditionally. Her, and my father, but. And so when she passed away, I just felt like my world was gone because that was the person that loved me unconditionally. But I'm grateful and I'm thankful that that she did love me, and my dad did love me, unconditionally. I just think that what we're trying to get across is that it's important because, like I said, my other siblings knew that they were adopted. They had an opportunity to meet their adoptive families, but. So that was the thing for me was like, I wonder why she didn't want me to, and I don't think she didn't want me to know. She just didn't want me to feel like
That's important.
I was different or right. I really felt like she was just trying to protect me, and so hey, I love her for it, and my dad too, because he never he never said anything to me about it either, but.
So you would had preferred known like at 12
I
or
think so.
earlier in life?
Yeah,
I think
40's a
so.
long time.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Would you have preferred to know later in life? Or
No, I
because you
think
could like opposite, so
I think the age that they told me was good. Honestly, I really think children should be told earlier than 12 because kids now they come out the womb wise.
yeah, they
Oh
do.
my God, yes.
So you know what? Yeah, by the time they go into first grade, you need to start.
Introducing it.
Yeah, whether it's through books or whatever, and gradually letting them know that, because I don't know. Sometimes, depending on the child,
Yeah.
you don't know what kind of reaction you're going to get.
I got a question. When did you tell your boys?
And how did they react?
How old were you? Yeah, they probably were teenagers.
How'd they take that?
How'd you take it, franchise? They didn't care. They knew who their Nana and Pop-Pop was, so nothing was going to change that, But I just felt that they should know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I waited
Absolutely.
later to tell them. And I think for me, it was just like, oh, how am I going to tell them that,
Yeah.
Everybody they've been
Yeah,
calling grandma.
But
and grandpa.
I definitely let them know, nope, you don't have to call her grandma. She's still aunt.
I don't understand how someone has 9 kids. If you can take care of 7, you can take care of 9.
Well, well,
Like,
wait,
why
but
do you-
I was number 7.
Maybe.
I was number 7. You got to remember, she was pregnant with number 6 when her husband died. So from 1 to 6, he was there.
Yeah.
Now I don't know anything about him, but he was there. So
It could have been
it
life-changing.
was, now he's gone and he was older than her, so she's experiencing life, I guess.
Right.
Catching up on what she missed out on.
Right. And so then I come along. Is she really ready to have another child? You got to realize, like, we're literally like a year apart.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 of my siblings, they're like 11 months apart. So we're literally like a year apart. So,
Yeah, well, my aunt on my dad's side did the same thing. She had 3 kids, had 2 more, gave them up for adoption, then had 3 more. Like, that made no sense to me. If you can take care of 6, you can take care of 8. Like, I don't
know if I'll ever, it didn't bother me that she adopted the other 2 after. Now, people did come up to me, once she got into church and stuff, and then she started telling people I was her daughter. I'm like, alrighty then. No, I'm Mary's daughter, but anyway. And so people, really looked at her some sort of way because they're like, well, she didn't raise you. Why she go adopt, those other children? Well, that's something you have to ask her. I don't, if maybe she felt if she could save these little girls' lives, then that's what she's going to do. So that's not my business. That's not my concern, and that never bothered me. It never bothered me that she adopted them.
What bothers you the most?
I just that I don't know the other side of the family. That's the only. I just want to know who they are.
Do you think
I don't want anything?
But someone
from them.
has to. Somebody
has to know. Do you ever think you'll
Someone
sit down
has
with
to
her
know the
and maybe
family.
just have like a serious conversation with a
Well,
set of
maybe
questions?
if she hears about this episode, because
It might stir it up.
it may. Now it could go really to the left,
Way, to the left,
It
to the
might,
left.
but we don't want
really
it
to the
to.
left, or it could go where she's like, well, you know what?
But you have the right to know.
Let us
Yeah.
sit down and talk. But I'm going to be wrong because, well, why didn't you come to me first? Well, you all never made me feel like this was a topic that could be discussed. So that's why I had to start a podcast to be able to talk about me. And I'm like this. I try to get people to come on to talk about different things. So I definitely have to be a partaker. So, yep, I needed to talk about me.
How have you ladies coped with your adoption process and just some of the questions that are unanswered? Like, who are you going to for help, for support, for those times where you just want to scream or cry, or you're just by yourself in the shower, just wondering like who's helping you get through this without therapy or any psychological help? You're just like using prayer.
I don't
the
think I
higher
need
power?
therapy because I think those days are long gone. Those
No?
things, it's just a thing for me of like just wanting to find out who they are. But I need Tyandra to come here for a second because when we talked about or step to one of those microphones, when we talked about I felt like children should be told earlier about the adoption, and she didn't agree with me. So I just want to know why, because someone listening to this may be in this situation. Well, do I tell the child now? Do I not? And I caught her off guard, so
I've seen it be done both ways, where the child was older and younger. When they're younger, they their questions are able to be asked. So when they, I had a little girl in my class, and when I worked on the east side, she was in a similar situation to you and Yolanda. She was given away, and there was siblings that was born after her as well. She was adopted by a couple, and from birth, and they explained to her from the day one. I think they kind of had during that situation, but I still seen the good that it could do. It was a white couple that adopted a black child, so I think that's what really made them want to tell her sooner. But the questions are the same, whether the parents look like you or not, like. And it's explaining, like, I'm your mom that's taking care of you, but I'm not the mom whose belly you was in. And she was able to have that. So now when we talk about family, she was able to communicate to me and the children in the classroom that her family is different, just like the families that we're reading about in the book. And she did it healthy. And the adopted family always left it open so that if she wants to know when she get older, she can contact that family member. Mm-hmm. But I just seen it being able to be processed and talked about, and those questions are always going to come up, like, who am I? But it gets easier because now she's going through the process younger, so she has time. So when she gets out of there, when she gets to that age, it won't affect her as well. So that's why I seen it work very well. So I think 4 is a good age.
4, okay.
Yeah, she was 4. She was in one of my preschool classrooms. I just think the process of it, because your questions do come up, and as they get older, the questions do change. But you've always been honest to me. The parents, they was open and honest, so it's like, you're not going to lie to me now. So it's like more of a comfort thing, like, you got my back.
Right. Makes sense.
I think they have to create a safe space, right? That children should be allowed to ask the questions, like you said, without having to worry about the feelings of the adults. Not, you know what I'm saying? Because as a child, that shouldn't be your worry. You should be able to feel free and feel safe to ask the questions and then get the answers to the questions. Because I think that makes it, otherwise it makes the child feel like adoption is a bad thing. And it's not a bad thing, And so I just think that what makes it a bad situation is when you don't know about it, or
Right.
you're living, thinking that things are one way and they're actually, another way. And everybody, I think, deserves to know where they come from.
Right.
And that was what I said to my siblings when I met them. I'm like, I'm here to meet you guys because I want to know where I come from. Not because I had a bad childhood. I just want to know where I come from, and I need to know, and I think that's important.
Right.
If you could ask your biological mom one question, what would it be?
What was her state of mind? Like, what was she going through at the time when she decided? Because she didn't, like I said, I was the second child that she put up
Yeah.
for adoption. So what was it that she was going through at the time that caused her to make that decision?
How about your adoptive mom?
Why she didn't think she could talk to me and have a conversation about it. And that literally is where I've come, like I've gotten myself to that point where that's all I'd like to know from both of them.
How about a listener who's listening? What would you tell a kid maybe who's listening about being adopted? Like, what advice would you give them?
Ask questions, and don't feel like you have to protect your adoptive parents. And so that's why I think it's a good idea to talk to people who have adopted children to kind of get their perspective on maybe why and how they or did they tell their children, when did they tell them, why, like what were those decisions, because I think that might also shed some light maybe on how things were done.
So many people, like, just in my opinion, I feel like everybody thinks the word adoption is like such a bad thing. I mean, I remember when I was pregnant at 15 years old, that's the first thing everybody said. Oh, Raisa, go have, give up the baby for adoption. And I was just like, no, like, I didn't want to. And, just not understanding that, kids do benefit from good families. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And we need to move away from that narrative that adoption is such a bad thing because it can almost be life-saving.
Yes.
It was the best for.
I was
it
just going
was
to
the
say,
best
do you
for me.
ladies feel like that? Like,
It was the
absolutely.
best. It was the best for me, and I'm sure my biological mom did the best she could with the children that that were with her.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I had the best.
Yeah.
I
Sure did.
I had the best, and I think one of the most important things was that not only did they give me the love, but they also gave me the discipline, and they showed me this had nothing to do with church. This was just their personality.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
they looked out for family. Like no matter what, they was
Right.
always there for family.
They were the backbone of the family.
My dad was the in-law, but you would have thought my mom's family were like his siblings, and like he was there bailing nieces and nephews out of jail, whatever he needed to do.
I was closer to
he
him
was
than I
there.
was to my blood uncles.
oh, wow.
And he's my uncle by marriage.
Oh, okay.
He married my mom's sister. So
So yeah, I wouldn't trade it.
So, Miss Sherla, what would you ask your mom if she was listening right now? Or if she was sitting in front of you, what would be the first question for her?
Who's the father? That's all I want to know. That's all I want to know. Honestly, that's all I want to know.
do you think Aunt Teresa and Uncle Dub knew?
Yeah, well, they're the ones who told me the little bit that I knew. That he brought my first pair of shoes. They called him A-Roy. He was in the, stationed in Newport. He had an aunt that lived on Taylor Street in Providence. And that was it. And those 4 things or whatever, that's what stuck all these years. But that was it. And I wanted to say something more, but it's like,
But at 12, you was just like,
what do you
do? You don't know.
Right. Yeah. Because am I pushing the envelope? Are they going to be upset with me? And, I don't want them to feel different towards me because now I'm asking all these questions about somebody I don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
But, and that was really my dad because I was so, I was a daddy's girl and I just did not want to
his feelings.
yeah, I just didn't want to crush him like that.
So what steps have you taken? I know Yolanda said she had done the Ancestry.com.
Ancestry.
What have you done to kind of maybe just
So I have that
Process
sitting
it.
on my desk at home.
what's that? So because the person doesn't know. So like what did you start like just to start the
So
process?
the
of
first thing I
finding?
did, because I knew that I wasn't adopted at birth, I did request my pre-adoption birth certificate. I requested it I put it in the mail last Tuesday, but I haven't gotten anything back yet. So I'm waiting to see what that says, and then I'm going to do the ancestry DNA. And there was one other thing you did. 1, 2, 3,
Yeah, 23andMe,
23andMe.
Which is
which is also a DNA testing company. Yeah.
is it
so-
free or is it something that you have to pay for?
Well, it costs, but it's not a lot. It's like $70-$80 or something like that. And you know, it basically, when I went on, it told me, you know, that my two sisters were my two sisters. You know, pretty much like they're your half sisters.
So you only know if somebody else within the family did the same test and kind of like register themselves. That's the only way you'll find out.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So we hope that somebody on your side did it, right?
Right. So we have to get ready and wrap this up.
That's a good question. Do you know
Station
what branch
in
of the
Newport.
military?
So what is Newport?
Navy.
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 Yeah, he would have
Yeah.
been in the Navy. I did hear rumor that he passed away. So I'm like, well, how do you know that?
Exactly. That's
So-
a good
someone knows
question.
something.
So, yes.
So you know his name. And I may reach out to that relative where it came from to ask her. Because I think she would be more, and she's a cousin, but she's an older cousin. So we call her aunt.
Okay.
But, you know, and it, you know, supposedly she said, oh, he, you know, Charlotte's father passed away. Well, how you know? You know him?
Someone knows something.
Somebody, yeah. So, Mama, wait, just another quick question. I know we got to wrap it up. So, what's like holding you back from reaching out to these people and asking the questions?
Because I finally just took the initiative to, like, you know what? I'm
Gonna
not
do it?
going to die wondering. I'm just not.
Okay.
You know, some things
I'm
you
proud
take
of
to your
you.
grave. I'm not taking this to the grave. And then Yolanda and I, we were just talking after church a few Sundays ago, and yeah, I'm like, oh, we got to do an episode on this. Because when she told me she found out at 41, I was like floored. Like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Because she came to school. You came to school and told her you was adopted.
I was, no, I told her I was
And I
the-
didn't even
That was the A.
I was
You was the
the
A.
It's so funny.
not knowing that I was also
Yeah.
the A word.
It's okay to be the A word.
I'm always the A word.
But that's because you didn't hear about it back then.
Right.
So
Yeah.
whether everybody was keeping secrets, it made you wonder, oh, my next door neighbors, are they adopted?
I know.
Because
You just-
I should ask, you know, let's
Never
do
know.
a street survey. How many people on the street are adopted? Because but anyway, that was good. Thank you for coming to interview us.
I appreciate you both sharing your story because there's so many people out there that are adopted and they may be embarrassed, they may feel ashamed, they may feel like nobody's out there like me or who can I trust. And so you two ladies shed some important insight on an important topic that I think a lot of people just need to know. And thank you for, you know, being so open about your families and, you know, I know that's tough. So I
Yeah.
can appreciate it.
Yeah, and I just really, my point was not to family bash. I love my family, even the biological mom. But I really just want, as the person who may be adopting children or doing foster care, like some people have children, foster children from 5 years old to adulthood, you know, but the child is entitled to know who their family is. One thing you said earlier, that medical reason is a big reason why they should know. They could have something rare going on in their body, and it's coming from that other side of the family. If you know you are taking care of that child to the best of your ability, you're giving them the love, you're there for them, you're giving them the support that they need, the respect is there, that child's not going nowhere.
You're right.
They are not going nowhere. But they are entitled to know where they came from.
Can I ask you one more question? Do you feel like the parent is entitled to hide their identity?
If the parent chooses to, but you can't, I just can't believe, and I say this from being a parent. So, and I think that all of us except Tyandra can agree to this. When you give birth, or you know someone had a child by you, I don't see how you can go through life and not wonder what
Right.
happened to that child.
I agree.
Because as the mom carrying a child for 9 months, even if you know you're not going to keep the child, there's a bond. There's a bond there. And as the dad, being with the woman who's carrying your child, and you're going through all this, you're there for the ultrasound, you're there for the heartbeat, you're there for when the baby's born, and then they take it and it goes somewhere else. There's no way that, unless you're just like deadbeat all the way around,
Cold-blooded.
there's no way you can go through life and not wonder
That's right.
about that child. I just don't see that. Now, I get it if someone's just like strung out. So then they're just like, mentally, they're just not there with themselves. So until they can get themselves together, they can't even think about a child that they gave away. But those that can go through life, you got good jobs, and especially if you had other children along the way that you kept, I just don't see that you don't think about that child. How they doing? How did they turn out? Where are they? Did
Are they
I do
looking
the
for
right
me?
thing? Yeah. Did I do
That's
the
a
right
big
thing?
one. Are they looking for me?
And then you know what? As that parent who may have done that, go look for your child. Just like a child looks for their parent, go look for your child. There's nothing wrong with that.
Is that a suggestion that you're putting out there for anybody who has put up their
Absolutely.
child for adoption? Like,
Absolutely. And anyone listening to this episode that would want to come on and talk about it, or we can talk about it a little more, and like Yolanda said, if we got to try to find someone who has done the adoption, and to see how how they handled it with the child or children that they have adopted. But my message is just like, what, the child has a right to know. Not at 41 years old, because that's an adult.
yeah.
Not at 41. No.
At 41, you could be dating your cousin.
And that's
that was
a key point,
That's true.
because my children right now could start liking a female, and we could find out later on down the line, and it happened in our family, that they're dating a relative.
It's true.
So there's so many reasons why the child has a right to know. Again, if you're doing the right thing by that child loves you unconditionally, and vice versa, they're not going nowhere. They're not going nowhere. Because had I known who my father was back then, even if I would have known who he was at 12, I don't even think he could have took me to the store without one of my parents being there, because I want to come back.
Yeah.
I'm coming back. So, my closing words are, don't deprive the child from finding out who their biological parents are. There's so many reasons why they need to know. And you never know growing up what kind of effect it will have on them, even if they become a parent. Mm-hmm. So they have that right to know. And just know, if they love you, you love them, they're not going nowhere. They know who the real mom and dad are.
They do. Kids know.
It's true.
Yep, they know.
But I think some people that adopt children might be nervous that parent might try to influence that kid, you know what I mean, and get in their head, and
It
the
does
kid
happen.
might
It does
might stray,
happen.
you know what I mean?
It happens.
Yeah, but again, if that bond is there, they're not going nowhere. They're not going nowhere. So with that being said, if everybody wants to just drop their socials, and then we'll wrap it up.
Miss Rhodey, you can find me on my Instagram, MSRHODEY. Miss Rhodey.
And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Yuli Cakes, and also just Yolanda, Maddie, and King.
You ladies are amazing. I'm
And I'm
sorry.
COJ208 on all platforms.
And I'm MS_Sherla on Insta. My Facebook is Sherla White, and you can also drop us a message. We like to hear from you if you want to be a guest on the podcast. If you have any input on the podcast episodes that you have heard, you can reach us at LTC.OT podcast@gmail.com. Thank you again, Miss Rhodey. Thank you, Yolanda. As always,
Thanks for
Corey. Appreciate it. Until the next time, peace and blessings.